I'm Anna, the Yarn Randomizer, and this is episode 16 of my podcast, and this is a knitting podcast, if that wasn't obvious by the thumbnails and such. Welcome to anybody who's new, and welcome back to folks who've been watching. I really appreciate folks taking the time to watch my little stories about what I'm working on and everything. And you can find me on Instagram and Ravelry. On Instagram, I am original.annasender there. And on Ravelry, I am the Yarn Randomizer. And new this episode, I've added a Gmail address for the podcast. Is the Yarn Randomizer, all one word, at gmail.com. All of that information will be down below. And then I'm peeking over at my notes and everything. And a quick why randomizer is I pick, for the most part, for my projects, I pick randomly from my extensive stash, which is over in my closet there. And this is my yarn space. This is my yarn room and computer room and my video gaming room. So I must confess that I am an avid video game player. And so I'm set up for that in here as well. And then the only other thing to say is please like and subscribe if you enjoy the podcast or get anything interesting out of it. And we will get right to it. As you can see, I finished my Win by the Lake sweater. And I finished it just maybe about a week ago or so. I really wanted to get this off the needles and have it ready, not just for the podcast, but because in a week I am taking a trip up to a sweater workshop at Darn It Anyway in, I think it's Stillwater, Minneapolis, and my husband and I will be going up there together while he visits his son. I will be doing some knitting with other folks and everything, so it should be a pretty fun little trip. And so I wanted to get this done, and I'm super happy with how it turned out. So you can see it is got a nice rounded yoke with the lace and with these slip stitches on here. It's probably got a more open neck that I tend to prefer, and maybe someday I might open this up and add to it. I do have decent amount of the yarn left over. This actually only took was it 988 yards of the it was Dream in Color Lamb that I got from the Gauge Yarn Shop in Austin, Texas. And so keep in mind, I got full sleeves and I got a full length. This is my kind of my favorite length of sweater. It's about 13 inches at the side, and I got that much sweater out of 988 yards of the, it's a fingering weight, but it's a plump fingering weight yarn, and it's got such a nice feel to it. Now I carried a mohair with that, and it was Ito Sensei mohair I picked up at the same shop. And so the interesting thing with this yarn, as you can see, is it's got this little bit of blotchiness in here, these little other colors that are kind of sprinkled in here. And I feel like they came through in little random spots. And so I think it looks pretty good. I like the way it turned out. It didn't end up, the only place it kind of pooled a little bit is here. You can see this kind of streak here in the neck, which is kind of interesting, but I really think it turned out nice. Now, the crazy thing with this sweater was when I went to soak it and block it, and I submerged it in cold water with some, I'm trying to think of the brand of wool wash that I use. But I put that, I had the right amount of that in there. I had cold water. I was carefully submerging it and pushing it down into the water. And you see the colors of this, it looks like, it's a beige sweater with some little darker brown parts and everything. Well, as I was pushing the sweater down into the water, I got a lot of color coming out between my fingers, and that color was not brown. That color was purple. There was purple coming off of this sweater as I pushed it into the water. And I put a little video on Instagram, and I will insert it here. Now, as it turns out, once I soaked it and rinsed, got it out of the water, squeezed out the water, there was no change in the color of the sweater. And I suspect that these little darker areas in the yarn are from a purple color rather than a brown color. But it was kind of enough to give you a little bit of a freak out about kind of like, what the heck is going on here? But it turned out lovely, and it has a great feel to it. Highly recommend the Dream in Color Lamb that's available there at Gauge. They've got some great colors there. And I'm so happy with how this turned out. I started with 2 skeins of it, but I got a third because I decided I wanted to make sure I could do full sleeves. But I still have a nice chunk of the yarn left over. So I did need the 3rd skein. But it turned out really nice. And the pattern was really nice as well. I'm trying to think if there was one other place. I put all my notes in my project page on anything about the pattern. It's got a little bit of short rows in the back to bring that back up a little higher and everything. And other than that, I think that was, the only other detail I need to bring up is that I did a Italian bind off for the sleeves and for the bottom edge. And let's see if you can see that. And what I do some of the time, and I've mentioned this before, is, sometimes with these tubular bind-offs, as they call them, with tubular bind-offs, you typically have a couple of rows where you only knit on every other stitch on each side. Basically you take ribbing and you kind of separate it into 2 layers so that it forms a very tiny tube. It's sort of like you're doing a little double knitting there in some ways. And then you sew together the 2 edges. On this sweater, on the most recent vest that I did, I just dispense with the tubular part of the tubular bind off, and I just do the grafting. And I think it turns out just fine, as you can see there. So I'm happy with it. So I'm really, really happy with this sweater, and it's something that I'll keep in mind, knowing that if I have around 1,000 yards of fingering weight yarn, I could definitely achieve a full long sleeve sweater in this pattern, and probably in the ranunculus as well. And we'll talk about one of those in a little bit as well. So super happy with the sweater, and that's what I'm wearing today. All right, finished objects. So not a lot. It's been 2 weeks, and I've been doing a lot of work on some big items like this sweater. But I did get a start on my first randomizer project for the year, where I had picked out some Croy yarn in Gentry Gray. And so there you can see how that's come up. Now the Gentry Gray I have in the toes. Keep my computer awake. Oh dear. There we go. Oh no. Okay, I'm gonna pause. I had accidentally closed my notes window. Okay, it's back up. So this pattern, okay, let me get ahead of myself here. So this is Yarn Randomizer Pick. This is my first pick for 2024, was this Gentry Gray Croy yarn that you see in the heels, toes, and cuff. And I combined it with some more Croy that I had in the Dad's Jacquard. And I think it turned out to be, I was uncertain about the combination, but I'm actually really happy with it. I like the strong contrast there to the Dad's Jacquard. And what I did was, this is a toe-up sock with a gusset. It's the Ringwood sock pattern that I like, but I did it without the texture. I just did it vanilla. And so it has a gusset, so it thins out these areas a little bit, but not too badly. And so the heel ended up being in the middle of one of these sections, which was kind of unusual. It'll be interesting to see how much the second sock matches this. And then as I got up here, I got to the length I normally do for a sock. I decided I would do the cuff when I reached this kind of everywhere. In each of these red sections, there's a little green stripe. And so I did that there. And I did, although it might not be very visible, I did a 2x1 ribbing at the top, and that's different than any one of these that I've done before. It had 31 stitches on each side, 62 around. And so I just added an extra stitch after I did a solid round to get a multiple of 3, and then did the 3x1 rib, which I think looks kind of nice. Okay, so that's sock half object finished, number 1, this one. The other one's on the needles, and I'm probably a little ways up here on it. I'm hoping I should have that done. I will have that done before the next podcast. It's going to be my travel knitting as I go up to Minnesota. So yeah, I think that turned out really nice, really nice. All right, so that's it for finished objects. So it's just a half object. Now for works in progress, I got a few things kind of sitting around. They're actually right there for the most part. The Stephen West mystery knit along for last year, which I will be picking up again soon, and a few other items there. But the ones I'm going to cover now, neither one of these are randomizer projects. I guess the socks are still in progress, so you see that. But one of them is a Christmas cast. It was my Christmas Eve cast on, and I wanted to show you that. And that is the ranunculus. And I'll show you how I'm doing. I'm almost down to the ribbing on the body. So again, you've seen this before. So I'm going to go for the same length I have in the sweater that I'm wearing right now. So it has about 13 inches. So I'll do 10 inches along here and then start the ribbing after I get 10 inches from under the arm down. So I get a total of 13. And then what I'll do is I'll pick up the sleeves and make them as long as I can with however much yarn that I have left. But I'm really liking how well this is turning out. And the yarn, although I should have alternated skeins, I did not. I was a lazy bum. I did not. But you'll see that the yarn really doesn't look any different where I changed over from one skein to the next. And so it's speckling up really nicely and not doing any unusual pooling. So it's resulting in a really great, I think this is this turning out really nice. I'm really looking forward to wearing this, and I'm hoping, I always joke around about the Yoda quote, do or do not, there is no try, from Star Wars. And I always talk about that being like, if you know you're capable, it's not about trying, it's about deciding to do it or not. So my effort will be, barring any other weird circumstances happening on the trip, between finishing my socks, I do want to finish this sweater and have it be what I wear for the next podcast. So that's my little lay down the gauntlet. That's my little personal challenge, is to get this one done. But I'm really enjoying the ranunculus. Is just a great pattern, and this is the size 5. I think it's the 5th size that I'm doing. And this yarn is from Hypnotic Yarn. It was their Christmas Eve cast on box, where you could pick from 1 to 10 skeins of the color that she was providing. In this case, it was vintage ornaments, which I really love. And the mohair is one from Drops. So here's the vintage ornaments right there. And so I just picked up from Wool Warehouse, one of my little favorite places to buy Drops yarn. And so it's turning out great. So this, I hope to be wearing it next time. So there's that. So it's actually going to be a relatively quick episode, I think. And again, sticking with my 2 weeks, but the fact that I'm really putting in a lot of effort on larger objects will decrease the amount of things that I'm showing. Now, okay, so the next in progress is my year-long effort on the Slip Stravaganza blanket. So I'm going to reach for that. Okay. So what I have is I have a budget of, I have a certain number of stitches I have to do minimum per day. I can do more if I want. And that's 537 stitches a day. Now remember, that's only about, 9 rows on a sock, depending on how many stitches you have on your sock and that kind of stuff. So it's not that big of a deal as far as the amount of knitting involved. I'm really enjoying this because it is a totally doable amount of knitting each day, and I'm really enjoying seeing this come together. I'm trying to unwind some yarn off of this here. Okay, so this is my progress so far. And you can see I've actually put it on a larger needle, and it's still pulling in now. So it's getting pretty generously sized now for just doing the amount of stitches I'm doing every day. This is the 26th of January, so this is 26 days in. I think it looks great. It's just really fun. I'm really enjoying how it looks. And in another 16 rows, I'll be done with this section 2 here of kind of this area of the blanket. And so yeah, it's really been fun to knit. So I'm enjoying knitting it. I'm enjoying the yarn, which I picked up from Finished Knits, and I'm looking forward to hitting the next section and everything. But I highly recommend breaking down what seems like a humongous project into bite-sized pieces like that you just do consistently, and you'll eventually get there. And I know for a fact in a year, well, not in a year, but by the end of this year, I will have this 86.5-inch diameter blanket ready for the guest room, which will be really cool. So yeah, so I recommend that project a lot. It's really a lot of fun to do. And that's the progress I've made on that. So that is all of my whips already. There are other ones that are kind of sitting, waiting in the wings for attention. And I think that my next priority when I finish the Christmas Eve cast on will be coming back to the Stephen West Mystery Knit Along, the Geo Gradient shawl from last year. I want to finish that one up. And then I'll just slowly kind of tick off the list. I had a lot of large knits on my, that were in process, and I want to kind of cut that down. And so that's my big effort this month and next month. And so hopefully as I get those finished, that'll open up some room for whips that are smaller in scale along the way. All right, now my notes. Acquisitions. Well, I didn't receive any new yarn in the mail. I haven't ordered any yarn. But one of the things that I did do was I had some leftovers from the Mystery Wool Along. It was I think it's in the May time frame, from Bare Naked Wools. And so if anybody hasn't seen it, here is the Hap shawl that was the Mystery Wool Along from last year, and it is just a beautiful shawl. I really loved it, really loved knitting it. It was just a really nice project and really intriguing yarns that went into the project. Well, I didn't have any leftovers of this Jacob sheep yarn here that's in the first part of the shawl, but for all the other colors, I did have some leftovers, and so I've finally gotten those into my stash. So if you look into my stash and what's been recently added, you will see that I have leftovers for this. I think I have them here. This is the Wensleydale, and it is just so lovely, and I don't think it's available anymore. But if you can get your hands on some Wensleydale, it was one of my favorites from the shawl. It has such a nice feel to it. As part of the Mystery Wool Along, there were videos that went into the history of each of the breeds of sheep that are included in this, and I think they'll be doing it again this year. And so it was definitely a lot of fun. The next one is the Frisian, if I'm saying that right, in this beautiful gray. And this is the one I have the most of left over. Most of these are about 70 yards left over. I have a little bit more than that of the Frisian. And then this is the Shetlandia Sport. And I think that's available at Bare Naked Wools. And again, this one also has a really nice feel. And then finally the Oxford Sport. And this one just has a really nice, you can just imagine this in a traditional cabled sweater for sure. And so I got those entered into my stash, and I'll be assigning numbers to them today to put into my bucket of chips for randomly picking yarns. So they'd had an unfair shake. They hadn't been up for being picked for the Yarn Randomizer, so now they will be. So everything that I have now, I think the only stuff I had, that was the only stuff I didn't have documented in my stash online and in my bucket. So that takes care of that. So that's the closest you'll get to acquisitions here this episode. Now, this brings us to a good subject, and that's stash management. Now, I had mentioned last time I had gotten a skein of yarn from Bare Naked Wools, and it was, my rule is twice as much out as in. So it was I believe it was 200, whatever, it was like, I think 275 yards on that skein, and I had finished my little fingerless mitts that I had last time, but that left me in the hole as far as yarn stash twice out. So I needed to destash, and my rule is I have to destash a full skein at minimum, and then I can destash one leftover, and then I have to go back to full skeins again to make up for the amount of yardage that has come up past my budget. I did this all of 2022, and I actually really kind of enjoyed the process, because it really gets me to winnow out the yarn that I'm, maybe I'm kind of like, that's nice, but it isn't something that I'm desperate to hold on to. So in that vein, I have picked a yarn to destash, and here it is. Let's see, let's bring it around. This is a Long Dog yarn, and this is their sock yarn. It's an 80%, was it superwash merino, 20% nylon, and it's kind of like pinks, but it's got these blues in there and light sections, and it's got some nice, I want to see if I can show you a section. Yeah, there are some areas of speckles in here as well. And so this is a yarn, I would probably make a pair of socks or something from this, but I've got so much purple stuff. I'm very much biased into buying kind of purples and pinks and stuff, as if you couldn't tell. So here it is. So this is what's available. Now, if you are interested, and I'll mail it wherever, anywhere in the world, it's okay. I'll send it out. Whoever's interested in it, I don't think, I think, I can handle that. I can do that, no problem, because my hope is this won't come up often to have to destash this year, but we'll see. But so this, all I'm asking is that you go into the comments and just say, say something like, I love Long Dog sock yarn. Something like this. This colorway, by the way, is called Just Plucked. So if you're interested in this, just mention the Long Dog yarn in your comments. And on the 9th of February, I'll make a pick from the comments, and you might be in a very, very small pool, so you probably have some really good odds here. And we'll figure out how to get it to you and stuff. So yeah. That's it. That's what you have available. That's what's up for giveaway. So there's that. So that'll get me almost, I still needed 2 more yards. This is a 400 yard skein. And so I still needed a couple more yards, but with the dispensing with the skein, I decided to just get rid of some of my leftovers. This is some Aran Weight Universal Yarn Classic Shades. And there's just, I think 12 yards of this left. So I will donate this, I'll accumulate this kind of stuff, but donate it. I usually donate it to the thrift shop here. Generally it's full skeins. Hey, Odo! Generally it's full skeins, but this will just be a partial that goes there, and very little. But that's it. So that brings me back to balanced. on my yarn stash. And with finishing this sweater, this was 988 yards. And so half of that, if you cut that in half, that gives me, was it 495 yards of yarn budget. So I'll hold on to that for the moment and see, you know, what comes in or comes out, and we'll see what happens. But let's see if I can build up some budget before I make another big purchase. All right. So now to the heart of the matter, Yarn Randomizer Picks. So I had 2 more numbers drawn, and I've had little shorts put up for them that you've probably already seen. Oddly enough, so the first, is pick number 5 for the year. Let me see if I can pull this a little closer. Oh, where's my little number? Well, this was pick number 5, and it was identified as yarn 180 in my, there it is. So this was yarn 180 in my stash. And it turns out this was a yarn that was picked just last year. I just finished the mitts last episode. So this was the same yarn, the junk yarn, smooth sock. Was it Takmatone? I hope that's the right way to say it. And I just have a little amount left, just 18 yards. And it's fair game in the Yarn Randomizer. Sometimes scraps get picked and they have to get used. And so this is obviously an extremely small scrap. So if you've watched any of the earlier episodes last year, I have a 10-stitch fingering weight blanket. Here's this big, huge blanket. I have this 10-stitch blanket that I'm working on. All right. And so when I get small amounts, less than 40 items that are less than 40 yards, I just kind of put them in here. And so this yarn, oh, I've buried it. This yarn will be going into my 10-stitch blanket next. And so when I get ready to work on it, I'll just work it into this. And I'll link below for the project. But it's normally done in DK weight. I decided to do it in fingering because I'm a masochist, I guess. I keep thinking I should have doubled up the fingering weight yarns and done it that way, but I'm okay. This will be a nice light blanket to have and stuff. But so it'll go into that. And so that's Yarn Randomizer pick number 5. Let me put this back in here. And then the real star of the show is Yarn Randomizer pick number 6 for the year. And so this was yarn 403 in my stash, which gives you an idea how much yarn is in my stash. More than that, but less than 500. I think 500 is my breaking point. But so this yarn, if you've seen the little short on it, this is this beautiful set of, these are 50-gram minis or half skeins from 3 Irish girls. And this was actually an exclusive set for the Harps and Thistles shop in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. But where I picked it up was there was a Vogue knitting event that happened in Columbus, Ohio in 2019. And you know, I don't know if I'll ever get a chance to attend Vogue knitting again unless I go to the coast, but it was so awesome. It showed up in Columbus in Ohio. And so this is this really beautiful set. So it's about, I think it's a total of, it is 1,075 yards total. So the question is what to do with this amount of fingering. Obviously I could do a shawl, but I've been kind of more into doing sweaters, garments lately. And I've seen a couple of fingering weight short sleeve shirts, sweaters that really look great. Some I've seen on Little Big Knits on Selma's podcast that I really like. She's got the perfect crop top, TCPT. And those, she's got a couple of those and those look great. But I looked at that one and I looked at a couple others, and the one I settled on was the Anna T, and I'll put in a picture somewhere. And it's by Sarah Stark, and I really love the detail in the shoulders. And I think what I'll do is I'll figure out a way to basically use one color at a time, and I'll kind of fade them into each other and just make a set of broad stripes going down in these different colors all the way down the sweater. Now the real question is, what order should I do those in? So that's something I'm going to have to give some thought to. You know, I'm thinking of this really bright color at the top and maybe getting darker towards the bottom, but where to put the variegated in, we shall see. But this is pick number 6, and it's a doozy for this year, for 2024, and this will be so much fun to knit and plan out. I think part of doing the random picks is it's like getting a puzzle to solve. I'll get a yarn out of my stash and I'll be like, oh, what the heck will I do with this? Because it's a lot of times I primarily buy yarn because I like the way it looks, and I don't always have concrete plans for it when it goes into my stash, and so it's fun to figure that out. So I think that is everything. I still owe you guys some stash tours, which I haven't processed yet, but my goal is to have the second part of my fingering stash tour up before I go to Minnesota in a week. And I've been thinking about doing a channel trailer as well. And I also have ideas on what I want to do long term. If, you know, this channel gets enough traction, that kind of stuff, what I'd like to do with it in the long run. I see folks doing these Patreon and the coffee thing. I don't even know what, I haven't looked into that at all. But I have been toying with the idea that I do not want to monetize this on YouTube. I've seen enough going on with other channels, some other channels that I watch where things get demonetized and things like that. It just sounds like a pain. And I don't want folks to have to watch more commercials than they're already dealing with and stuff. So I think if I do anything, and the other thing is, a big thing about it is, I want this to be a channel that gives back. I know lots of people will give away yarn and stuff on their podcast. What I'd love to do is kind of support local yarn shops and give like gift certificates out to folks as part of a regular part of the podcast. And so I'm still noodling about all that. But the fundamental idea is that if this were to get any income from this in the long run, that should partially go to charity and partially go back to the folks watching the podcast. And that, I think, would be some of the best use for that and everything. But that's just short and sweet, my thinking on that front right now. And I might put up a little video where I talk a little bit more about that. So other than that, I think that's everything. So pretty quick episode this time. And in 2 weeks, I'll have come back from my knitting retreat. So I'll have that to talk about as well. I'll put details below about where that's at and what's going on. But otherwise, I hope you folks are having a wonderful winter so far, that it's been kind to you. Cold enough to wear sweaters, but not bad enough to deal with like tons of feet of snow and everything. And so otherwise, please enjoy your knits.